The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal gardens of HFY. When Commander Hyun first saw the dark shapes moving between the stars, the Villani had built their world to be perfect and peaceful over 50,000 years of careful planning and gentle progress, and now something terrible was coming toward their home, and Hyun could feel his translucent hands shaking as he watched the sensor readings change from yellow to red. The council chamber filled with worried voices as more Villani leaders arrived to see what their detection systems had found, and scientist Nari moved her long fingers across the control panel with practiced grace, while her large eyes reflected the warning lights that flashed across every screen. "Though, objects are definitely ships," Nari said in her soft voice that barely rose above a whisper like all Villani speech. "They number in the hundreds, and they are moving in perfect formation toward our system, and their energy signatures match nothing in our peaceful contact database." Hyun felt his heart beating faster than it had in his 300 years of life, because the Villani had never faced anything like this before, and their entire civilization was built on the idea that all intelligent life would choose cooperation over conflict, given enough time and understanding. The first attack came 3 days later, when the unknown ships reached the outer settlements of their system and began firing weapons that turned their beautiful mining stations into clouds of glowing debris that sparkled like deadly stars against the black of space. "They are called the Krathari Empire," reported Communications Officer Baum as she translated the harsh clicking sounds that came from the attacking ships. "They say we have something they need, and they will take it whether we agree or not. And they do not seem interested in talking about peaceful solutions." Hyun watched the tactical display showing how the Krathari ships moved like insects, swarming around their prey, and he could see that these beings had turned warfare into an art form. While his people had spent their long history creating music and poetry and scientific discoveries that helped everyone live better lives, the Krathari warriors looked like walking nightmares when the first images came through their communication systems, with hard black shells that covered their entire bodies, and clicking mandibles that could cut through metal, and compound eyes that saw everything. "Without showing any emotion or mercy, our defense shields can hold them back for maybe 2 weeks, said Defense Coordinator Kim as she ran calculations on her personal display. "But their weapons are designed for conquest and destruction, while ours were built for protection and research, and they seem to have much more experience with this kind of fighting." Nari spent the next day searching through every database they had ever collected about other species in the galaxy, and most of the records spoke of civilizations that had tried to fight the Krathari and failed completely, with their worlds turned into mining colonies and their people used as workers until they died from exhaustion. "There is one entry here that might give us hope," Nari said as she highlighted a small file that had been marked as incomplete and unverified. "It speaks of a species that was contacted recently by our deep space exploration teams, but they never responded to our friendship messages." The file showed a blue and green world that orbited a yellow star at what seemed like a dangerous distance, and the planet was marked with warning symbols that indicated extreme weather and geological instability and biological hazards that would kill most known life forms. "They call themselves humans, and they live on a world that our scientists have classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, which means it is one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy to support intelligent life." Nari continued reading. From the file, the exploration team noted that these humans seemed to thrive in conditions that would be fatal to most species. Hyun looked at the data and felt something he had never experienced before, which was a mixture of hope and fear, because anyone who could survive on such a terrible world might be strong enough to help them, but they might also be too dangerous to contact. "We have no choice," said Council Leader An as she reviewed the tactical reports that showed more Krathari ships arriving every hour. "If we do nothing, then our people will be enslaved or killed, and our beautiful world will become another mining operation for their empire." The message they prepared was simple and direct, because they did not know if humans could understand their complex diplomatic language, and they did not have time for the careful negotiations that Villani preferred for all their important communications. "Ancient, peaceful civilization faces extinction," they broadcast toward the coordinates where the humans lived. Coordinates attached, and any assistance would be appreciated by people who have never known war. but are learning what it means to face those who live for conquest. Meanwhile, on the blue world called Earth, a man named Admiral Day was sitting in his office reviewing reports about their planet defense systems when the alien message came through their deep space monitoring stations and changed everything humans thought they knew about their place in the universe. The message had been translated by their best computers, but the meaning was clear enough that even a child could understand it, and Dave felt his pulse quicken as he realized this was the moment that would define how humanity stepped onto the galactic stage. Intelligence Officer Sung brought him more information within the hour, including detailed analysis of the signal source and the attached coordinates and tactical assessments of what it might mean for Earth if hostile aliens were moving through their region of space. The message came from approximately 400 light-years away. Sung reported as she placed data tablets on his desk. Our computers estimate that whoever sent this has technology that is far more advanced than ours in most areas, but they are asking for military help, which suggests they are not as advanced in warfare. President Jin arrived by emergency transport from the capital city and brought with her the authority to make decisions that would affect all of humanity and possibly all life in their part of the galaxy. We always knew this day might come when we would meet other intelligent life, President Jin said as she studied the alien message. But we thought we would be the ones asking for help, not the ones being asked to provide it, and now we have to decide what kind of neighbors we want to be. The debate lasted for 6 hours as military leaders and scientists and politicians discussed whether humanity was ready for interstellar war and whether they had any moral obligation to help aliens they had never met, fight enemies they did not understand. These Villani sound like they have never fought a real war in their entire history, said General Pak as he reviewed the cultural information that came with the message. They built their civilization on cooperation and peaceful development, and now they are facing an enemy that specializes in conquest, and they have no idea how to defend themselves. Admiral Day stood up and walked to the large window that showed the lights of the city below, where millions of people live their daily lives without knowing that aliens existed, and that some of those aliens might be coming their way next. We have been preparing for interstellar conflict since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, Day said to the assembled leaders. Every weapon system we have built and every tactical doctrine we have developed has been designed for the possibility that we might face enemies from other worlds. President Jin made the decision that would send humanity to war among the stars for the first time in their history, and she signed the authorization with steady hands, despite knowing that everything would be different. After this moment, Operation Deathworld response is approved, she announced to the room. We will show the galaxy what humans do when peaceful people ask for our help, and we will make sure that our first impression on galactic civilization is one they will never forget. The orders went out within minutes to every military base and shipyard on Earth and in their orbital facilities as humanity began preparing for a war that would take them farther from home than they had ever traveled before. Fleet Admiral Wan stood on the command bridge of the orbital shipyard looking down at Earth, while hundreds of technicians worked around the clock to prepare humanity's greatest warships for their first journey to another star system. The planet below looked peaceful from this distance, but one knew that every continent was buzzing with activity, as military bases loaded equipment and soldiers prepared for a war unlike anything humans had ever fought before. The flagship Soul Pride is ready for deployment, reported Chief Engineer Yoon as she handed Wan the final systems report. All weapons are loaded and tested, and the ship can operate independently for 8 months without resupply, which should be more than enough time to reach the alien homeworld and complete whatever mission awaits us there. One studied the technical specifications and felt proud of what human engineering had accomplished in just 70 years since they first reached their own moon, and now they were building ships that could cross the galaxy and fight enemies they had never seen. The Soul Pride was massive even by Earth standards, with armor plating designed to survive impacts from asteroids and weapons systems that could crack open mountains, and life support that could keep 3,000 crew members alive in the cold emptiness between stars. What about the rest of the fleet? One asked as she reviewed the deployment schedule that showed dozens of ships being prepared simultaneously, at shipyards around their solar system. 12 heavy cruisers are loaded and ready with full combat loadouts. Yoon continued reading from her tablet. 30 fast attack corvettes have been equipped with our latest stealth systems and long-range missiles, and all support vessels are standing by with medical facilities and engineering teams. The human fleet had been designed with one simple principle in mind, which was that space was trying to kill anyone who dared to travel through it, and their ships needed to be tough enough to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Each warship carried enough firepower to level entire cities and armor, thick enough to survive direct nuclear hits and redundant systems that meant they could keep fighting, even after taking damage that would cripple most vehicles down on Earth. Marine Colonel Gill was inspecting the 10,000 soldiers who would represent humanity in ground combat against an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire civilizations. Remember that we are not just fighting for these aliens we have never met, Gill told his assembled Marines as they stood in perfect formation, wearing their powered combat armor. We are showing the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens innocent people, and we are making sure that no enemy ever thinks Earth would be an easy target. The Marines looked like walking tanks in their battle suits that amplified human strength and speed and protected them from radiation and poison gas and temperature extremes that would kill unprotected humans in seconds. Each soldier carried weapons that had been tested in Earth's most dangerous environments, from the frozen Antarctic to the burning deserts to the crushing depths of the ocean, and they were trained to fight and win in conditions that would stop most armies. Dr. Mi walked through the preparation areas, studying everything she could about alien biology and trying to understand what humanity might face when they reached the war zone 400 light-years away. The Villani appear to be an almost perfect example of peaceful evolution, she told the briefing room full of officers and scientists. They have developed incredible efficiency in all their biological systems, but they seem to have no natural defenses against predators or hostile environments. The biological data that came with the alien distress call showed that the Villani were tall and graceful, with translucent skin and delicate bone structures that would make them vulnerable to almost any form of violence. Their enemies, the Krithari, seemed to be the opposite. Dr. Mi continued, as she displayed images of the insectoid invaders. They have evolved for conquest, with natural armor and weapons and social structures based on dominance and expansion, rather than cooperation. Captain J studied these reports while his crew prepared the Soul Pride for the long journey ahead, and he tried to imagine what it would be like to fight enemies that were essentially giant insects with advanced technology. Their tactics seemed to be based on overwhelming numbers and coordinated attacks, Jay told his senior officers during their final strategy meeting, but they have never faced an enemy that comes from a world like Earth, where everything is designed to survive in the most hostile conditions possible. The human ships were loaded with supplies and equipment that reflected their home planet brutal environment, including medical kits that could treat injuries from radiation and poison, and extreme temperature exposure, and tools that could repair damaged equipment using whatever materials were available. We are bringing more firepower to this fight than anyone expects, said Weapons Officer Han as she ran final tests on the Soul Pride main guns. Our kinetic railguns can punch through any armor we have ever tested, and our plasma cannons generate temperatures that exist inside stars. The fusion missiles in their arsenal had been designed to destroy incoming asteroids that might threaten Earth, and each warhead carried enough destructive power to flatten entire mountain ranges. Engineer Tay worked with teams across the fleet to make sure every system could operate in the unknown conditions they might find around an alien star, and he built redundant backups for their most critical equipment. We do not know what kind of interference or environmental hazards we might encounter, Tay explained to his technical staff. So every ship carries spare parts and fabrication equipment that will let us rebuild anything that gets damaged during the mission. The human approach to interstellar warfare was based on lessons learned from thousands of years of fighting on a world that never gave anyone a second chance to make mistakes, and their ships reflected that harsh experience. Admiral Day reviewed the final deployment orders while sitting in his command center surrounded by displays showing the status of every ship and every Marine and every piece of equipment that would make the journey to defend an alien world. We have 2 weeks to travel 400 light-years and arrive ready for immediate combat, Day announced to his fleet commanders during their last briefing before departure. We do not know what we will find when we get there, but we know that innocent people are depending on us to succeed. The human fleet represented the combined military might of their entire planet, with ships and weapons and soldiers that had been built and trained for the possibility of exactly this kind of mission. Intelligence suggests that these Krathari have never faced serious resistance from any of the worlds they have conquered, said Intelligence Officer Sung as she presented her analysis of enemy capabilities. They seem to rely on intimidation and overwhelming force against opponents who are not prepared for warfare. The final preparations included loading cultural databases and translation programs that would help humans communicate with both the Villani they were trying to save and the Krathari they would have to fight. Dr. Mi packed her research equipment and prepared for the first detailed study of alien life forms that any human had ever attempted, while hoping that her biological knowledge might help find weaknesses in their enemies. The insects on Earth have taught us that even the most heavily armored creatures have vulnerable points, she told the Marine commanders who would be leading ground combat. We just have to find what works against these particular insects. Fleet Admiral Wan gave the final order to depart as the human fleet activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared from Earth's solar system, carrying with them the hopes and fears of an entire species. The ships jumped into hyperspace with their crews ready for anything, and their holds full of everything they might need to fight a war in an alien star system against enemies they had never seen before. Behind them, Earth continued its daily rotation while billions of people went about their normal lives, not knowing that their representatives were traveling across the galaxy to write the first chapter of humanity's story as a galactic military power. The journey would take 2 weeks, and when it ended, the humans would learn what it meant to be known throughout the galaxy as creatures from a death world who had answered an alien cry for help with the most powerful fleet their planet could build. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the HFY system and immediately saw the signs of war spread across what should have been a peaceful alien paradise. Admiral Day stood on the bridge of the Soul Pride and watched. The tactical displays fill with red markers showing Krathari ships positioned around the beautiful blue-green world like predators surrounding their prey. Enemy fleet consists of approximately 300 vessels, reported Tactical Officer Park, as she counted the ships that blocked all escape routes from the planet below. They have established orbital bombardment positions and are systematically destroying surface installations. Commander Hyun was in his command center on SciFiPrime when the new contacts appeared on their sensors, and for a moment he thought the Krathari had brought reinforcements until he saw the ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. The new vessels do not match Krathari design patterns, announced Sensor Operator Lim, as she studied the readings that showed ships unlike anything in their databases. They appear to be heavily armed and armored, but their configuration is completely unknown. The human ships looked like flying fortresses to the Villani observers, with thick hull plating and weapon systems that bristled from every surface and engine signatures that suggested incredible power and endurance. Admiral Day opened communication channels using the translation protocols that Dr. Mai had prepared during their long journey, and his voice reached the alien defenders on the planet below. This is Admiral Day of the Terran Defense Force responding to your distress call. His words were translated into the soft musical language of the Villani. We have come to provide military assistance against your enemies. Commander Hyun felt his hands shaking as he heard the first words ever spoken by a human to his people, and something in the alien voice suggested strength and confidence that the Villani had never possessed in their long, peaceful history. We are grateful for your response, Hyun replied while trying to keep his voice steady. The Krathari have been attacking our world for 6 days, and our defenses cannot hold them much longer. Dr. Mi studied the first images of living Villani that came through their communication systems and was amazed by how delicate and graceful they appeared compared to humans, with their tall frames and translucent skin that seemed almost too fragile for physical existence. They look like they were designed for a perfect world where nothing ever tries to hurt them, she told Admiral Day during their private conference. I can see why they need help against a warrior species like these Krathari. The Crethari fleet detected the human arrival within minutes, and Queen Commander Zisthak studied the new ships with her compound eyes while her tactical officers analyzed their capabilities. The newcomers appeared to be primitively constructed, reported her second-in-command through the clicking sounds of their insectoid language. Their armor is thick but crude, and their weapons seem to be simple kinetic and energy systems. Zisthak had conquered 47 worlds for the Crethari Empire, and she had seen every type of defense that galactic civilization could deploy, and none had been able to stop her disciplined formations of experienced warriors. "Deploy Formation 7 to test their capabilities," she ordered, as 200 of her best fighters moved to intercept the human fleet in the precise patterns that had broken the defenses of every world she had ever attacked. Captain J watched the approaching Crethari ships on his tactical display and felt something that might have been excitement building in his chest as he prepared for humanity. First battle against alien enemies. All ships weapons free. Admiral Day commanded across the fleet communication network. Show them what humans do when someone threatens innocent people. The first exchange of fire lasted 17 minutes, and when it ended, the Crethari formation had been completely destroyed, while the human fleet had not lost a single ship. "Impossible," whispered Queen Commander Zisthak as her sensors showed the wreckage of her finest fighters scattered across the space where they had expected to achieve an easy victory. The human weapons had performed beyond anything the Crethari had ever encountered, with railgun projectiles that punched through their armor like paper and plasma bolts that melted their hull plating in seconds. "Their ships are operating at acceleration levels that should kill any crew inside," reported her tactical officer while studying the combat data, "and their weapons generate temperatures that we have only seen inside stellar cores." Captain J had ordered his ship to perform maneuvers that pushed his crew to their limits, but the humans endured acceleration forces that would have crushed most alien species and continued fighting with precision that amazed even themselves. "Target their command ships next," J ordered as his gunners locked onto the largest Crethari vessels. "Let them know that we are not here to play defensive games." The Soul. Pride main guns fired in sequence, sending tungsten projectiles at 30% of light speed toward the enemy flagship, while plasma cannons created brief stars in the darkness of space. Commander Hyun watched the battle from his planetary command center and could hardly believe what he was seeing as the humans fought with an intensity and effectiveness that seemed impossible for any civilized species. "They are not just fighting to win," observed scientist Nari as she analyzed the human tactical patterns. "They appear to be enjoying the combat in a way that we cannot understand." The human Marines prepared for their first ground assault, while Colonel Gill reviewed the tactical information that their orbital sensors had gathered about Crethari positions on the planet's surface. "These insects have never fought anyone who comes from a world that tries to kill everything that lives on it," Gill told his troops as they checked their weapons and equipment. "We are going to show them what real predators look like." Dr. Mi began her analysis of Crethari biological samples that the fleet had collected from the destroyed fighters, and she found exactly what she had hoped to discover. They are remarkably similar to Earth arthropods in their basic structure, she reported to the command staff, which means they probably share similar vulnerabilities to sonic disruption and chemical interference. The human fleet modified their communication arrays to generate specific frequency patterns, while their fabrication units began producing compounds that would interfere with Crethari pheromone systems. Queen Commander Zesthak realized that she was facing something completely outside her experience when her remaining ships began reporting equipment failures and communication disruptions that made coordinated attacks impossible. "What are these humans?" She clicked to her senior officers as another wave of her ships was destroyed by weapons that seemed designed specifically to counter everything the Crethari Empire had ever developed. Admiral Day opened communication channels to both the Villani defenders and the Crethari attackers as his fleet moved into position around the contested planet. "This is your only warning," he broadcast in both alien languages. "Withdraw from this system immediately, or we will demonstrate why our homeworld is classified as a death world." Commander Hyun felt something he had never experienced before, which was hope mixed with fear, as he realized that these humans might actually be strong enough to save his people from conquest and slavery. "They fight like the universe itself," train them for warfare, he told his staff as they watched human ships destroy Crethari formations, with tactics that seemed impossible to counter. The first day of combat ended with the Crethari fleet reduced by half, while the human fleet had suffered only minor damage to their armor and no casualties among their crews. Thak spent the night planning her response to this unexpected challenge, while her surviving captains reported that the humans seemed to have solutions for every Crethari tactic and weapon system. Send word to the Imperial reserves. She finally decided, if these Deathworlders want to fight, then we will show them what happens when they face the full might of the Crethari Empire. The Crethari response came 3 days later, when Queen Commander Zishthak Reserve Fleet arrived with 500 additional warships and orbital bombardment platforms that could crack continents apart. Admiral Day studied the tactical display, showing more enemy contacts than his fleet had ammunition to destroy, and felt the familiar sensation that every human military leader knew which was being outnumbered but not outmatched. They think superior numbers will compensate for inferior tactics, he told his senior officers during their strategy meeting. Now we show them why humans have been fighting each other for 10,000 years and getting better at it every generation. Fleet Admiral Wan activated deep strike protocols that had been developed for fighting multiple enemies simultaneously while maintaining defensive positions around critical objectives. The human corvettes disappeared from Crethari sensors, using stealth systems that had been designed to hide ships in the radiation fields around Earth pulsars, and began attacking enemy supply lines with precision that devastated their logistics. Unknown contacts are hitting our fuel depots and ammunition convoys, reported Zeshthak tactical officer as red warnings flashed across every display in her command center. The Crethari had never faced an enemy that would ignore the main battle to attack their support systems, and their formations began to lose cohesion as ships ran low on fuel and weapons. Marine Colonel Gil led the first ground assault on a Crethari-occupied moon, where the enemy had established forward bases for their planetary invasion forces. Remember that these insects evolved on a world that was probably much gentler than Earth, Gil reminded his Marines as they prepared to drop from orbit. They have natural armor, but they have never faced weapons designed to hunt the apex predators of a death world. The Marines landed in an environment that would have been lethal to most galactic species, with toxic atmosphere and radiation levels that required full protective gear and temperature fluctuations that swung between freezing and boiling. This place is almost comfortable compared to the Antarctic training facility, joked Sergeant Ryu as his squad advanced through terrain that looked like the surface of hell itself. The Crethari defenders had built their positions, assuming that no enemy would be able to operate effectively in such hostile conditions, and they were completely unprepared for humans who treated extreme environments as minor inconveniences. Human squad tactics confused the hive-minded Crethari, who expected all enemies to follow predictable group behaviors and could not adapt to individual soldiers making independent decisions. They keep splitting up and attacking from unexpected directions, reported the Crethari base commander to Queen Commander Zeshthak. Our coordination protocols cannot predict what they will do next. Each human squad operated like a pack of earth wolves, with individual initiative combined with perfect cooperation and the ability to adapt their tactics instantly based on changing battlefield conditions. The Marines discovered that Crethari exoskeletons, while impressive against conventional weapons, had not evolved to resist the specialized ammunition that humans used for hunting dangerous animals. Their armor works fine against energy weapons, but these tungsten core rounds go right through, reported Corporal Jin as his team cleared another enemy bunker with minimal casualties. Captain J made a breakthrough when Dr. Mi shared her biological analysis of captured Crethari specimens with his tactical team. They use subsonic communication frequencies for coordination, just like Earth insects, she explained while showing them the data from her xenobiology laboratory. If we can disrupt those signals, we can turn their greatest strength into a weakness. The Soul Pride communication arrays were modified to broadcast interference patterns that made Crethari formations lose their ability to coordinate attacks and retreat in organized patterns. The enemy ships are no longer moving in formation, reported Tactical Officer Park as she watched Crethari vessels begin to operate independently instead of as unified groups. Without their hive mind advantages, the Krathari found themselves fighting individual battles against human crews who had been trained to think and react faster than any group. Decision-making process could match scientist Nari, provided the humans with detailed maps of SciFiPrime unique crystalline formations that covered much of the planet's surface in geometric patterns that had taken millions of years to form, engineer. Tay realized immediately that the crystal structures could be used as amplifiers for human weapon systems, turning the entire world into a defensive network. If we position our ships correctly, we can use the planet natural resonance to multiply our firepower by a factor of 10, he told Admiral Day while showing him the calculations. The human fleet moved into positions that let them channel their weapons through the crystal formations, creating focused beams of energy that could destroy entire Krathari squadrons with single shots. Queen Commander Zisthak watched her casualties mount into the thousands while the Deathworld humans seemed to have unlimited solutions for every tactical problem she presented. They fight as if warfare was their natural state, she told her remaining captains during an emergency conference. Every weapon system we deploy they counter within hours, and every tactic we attempt, they have already prepared defenses against. The Krathari Empire had conquered worlds by using overwhelming force against civilizations that had no experience with real combat. But the humans seemed to understand warfare at a level that exceeded even their own military specialists. Commander Hyun observed the human tactics from his command center and began to understand why their homeworld was classified as the most dangerous environment in the galaxy. They do not just fight to survive, he told scientist Nari as they watched human marines advance through conditions that would kill most Villani instantly. They fight as if they expect to win against any opponent no matter how numerous or well-armed. The human approach to warfare reflected millions of years of evolution on a planet where only the strongest and smartest and most adaptable creatures survived long enough to reproduce. Dr. Mi completed her analysis of Krathari biology and developed a harmless virus that would interfere with their pheromone communication systems, giving their entire invasion force the equivalent of social anxiety. This will not hurt them, but it will make coordinated attacks impossible, she explained to Colonel Gill as his Marines prepared to deploy the biological weapon using aerosol dispersal systems. The virus spread through Krathari positions within hours, causing their formations to collapse into confusion as individual soldiers lost the ability to communicate effectively with their units. Our troops are reporting communication failures across all frequencies, the Krathari field commander told Queen Commander Zisthak. They can no longer coordinate attacks or receive orders. Admiral Day realized that the battle had reached its turning point when Krathari resistance began to crumble under the combined pressure of human weapons technology and biological warfare. Prepare for final assault. He ordered his fleet commanders, we end this before they can adapt to our tactics. The human fleet moved into attack formation while their marine forces prepared for the decisive ground battles that would determine whether the Villani homeworld would remain free or become another Krathari conquest. Fleet Admiral Wan coordinated the complex operation that involved simultaneous attacks on orbital positions and surface installations while maintaining defensive coverage for the vulnerable Villani population centers. Queen Commander Zestak faced the first major defeat in her military career as she realized that the Deathworld humans had turned her seemingly unstoppable invasion force into scattered groups of confused and demoralized soldiers. These humans have shown us that there are species in the galaxy who are more dangerous than we ever imagined, she reported to the Krathari High Command. We may need to reconsider our expansion policies. Queen Commander Zizisthak made her final desperate decision when the Krathari High Command authorized her to use their entire strategic reserve fleet of 800 ships in one last attempt to salvage their conquest of SciFiPrime. If we cannot defeat these Deathworlders with superior numbers, then the Krathari Empire faces its first major failure in 500 years of expansion, she told her surviving captains as the massive reinforcement fleet arrived from their home systems. Admiral Day watched the enemy fleet grow to nearly twice the size of anything humanity had ever faced, and felt the cold satisfaction that came from knowing his crews were about to prove what humans could accomplish when they stopped holding back. Activate Protocol Omega, He ordered across all fleet communication channels using the authorization codes that would unlock their most extreme combat capabilities. Every human ship began overloading their power systems and converting life support reserves into weapons energy, while their crews prepared for battles that would push their vessels beyond normal operational limits. The Soul Pride became a moving constellation of destruction as Captain J rerouted every available power source into his weapon systems and told his crew to prepare for combat that would either end in victory or death. "We are going to show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens innocent people," Jay announced to his ship as they charged toward the Krethari battle line, "and we are going to make sure they never forget it." The space battle that followed became legendary among every species that monitored galactic communications as human ships fought with an intensity that defied everything known about civilized warfare. When the Soul Pride lost main power after taking direct hits from 6 Krethari heavy cruisers, Captain J switched to manual controls and used chemical thrusters to ram the enemy flagship. Both crews survived impacts that would have killed most galactic species and continued fighting in hand-to-hand combat through the wreckage of their destroyed ships. Marine Colonel Gill implemented Sherman Protocol on the planet's surface, which was humanity's most ruthless ground warfare. Doctrine designed to break enemy morale through systematic destruction of their command structure. Target every Krethari officer facility, communication relay, and supply depot. Gill ordered his Marines, "We are going to make it impossible for them to organize any kind of effective resistance." The human ground forces moved through hostile territory with precision that amazed even their enemies as they destroyed everything the Krethari needed to maintain their invasion while avoiding civilian casualties. Dr. Me and scientist Nari worked together in a joint research facility to create biological solutions that would end the war without unnecessary killing. "We can modify the pheromone disruption virus to make it permanent," Dr. Me explained, as she showed Nari how human biological warfare techniques could be adapted for humanitarian purposes. The new virus would give Krethari soldiers permanent social anxiety, making coordinated attacks impossible while leaving them physically unharmed and able to return to peaceful occupations. Queen Commander Zizthak realized that her empire had underestimated not just human military capabilities, but their approach to warfare itself, which seemed designed to achieve victory through superior strategy rather than simple destruction. "These Deathworlders fight smarter than we do," she admitted to her senior staff as reports came in showing human forces winning battles against overwhelming odds through tactics that no Krethari commander could predict. The turning point came when Dr. Me released the modified virus into the atmosphere around every major Krethari position, using delivery systems that the enemy could not detect or counter. Within hours, the entire invasion force lost the ability to function as coordinated military units and began behaving like confused individuals who could not understand why they were fighting. "Our troops are abandoning their positions and requesting evacuation," reported the Krethari ground commander. "They seem to have lost all motivation for conquest, and several units are asking about peaceful employment opportunities." Queen Commander Zizthak faced complete military defeat for the first time in her career and made one final attempt to salvage her mission by challenging Admiral Day to single combat, with the winner determining the fate of both fleets. "I accept your challenge, but with modified terms," Admiral Day replied through their communication channels. "The combat will be between representatives of our civilizations fighting to demonstrate our different approaches to conflict resolution." The duel took place on SciFiPrime surface in an arena surrounded by the crystal formations that had amplified human weapons throughout the battle, while both fleets watched the combat that would determine their future. Colonel Gill faced Queen Commander Zizithak in personal combat that showcased everything that made humans dangerous in a galaxy full of species that had never learned to fight for survival. The human marine used tactics that reflected millions of years of evolution on a death world, while his opponent relied on natural weapons and armor that had evolved for dominance over weaker species. Gill took wounds that would have incapacitated most galactic life forms and continued fighting with determination that came from growing up on a planet where surrender meant death. This human refuses to accept defeat, even when facing superior physical advantages. Zizthak realized as the battle continued far longer than any Crithari combat had ever lasted. The fight ended when Gil used his knowledge of arthropod biology to exploit a weakness in Crithari exoskeleton design that Dr. Mi had discovered during her research queen. Commander Zishthak acknowledged defeat with the dignity of a professional warrior who had learned something important about the galaxy and the species that inhabited it. The Crithari Empire withdraws from this system, she announced to both fleets. These humans have taught us that conquest is not always possible when facing species that are truly committed to defending their allies. The formal withdrawal of Crithari forces marked humanity's first victory in interstellar warfare and established their reputation as the galaxy's newest military power. 6 months later, Ambassador Ray oversaw the construction of humanity's first interstellar embassy on SciFiPrime, while Dr. Mi led joint research projects that combined Vellani scientific efficiency with human technological durability. Commander Hyun had become the official liaison officer between the two species and spent his days marveling at how quickly humans adapted to galactic civilization while maintaining their essential nature. What impressed you most about humanity? Asked scientist Nari during one of their regular meetings to coordinate ongoing cooperation between their peoples. They turned first contact into a rescue mission and somehow made both our species stronger in the process, Hyun replied while looking out at the mixed crews of humans and Vellani, working together to rebuild the damaged orbital facilities. The Human-Vellani alliance became the foundation for a new approach to galactic politics based on mutual defense rather than conquest or submission. Admiral Day received reports of distress calls from other worlds throughout their region of the galaxy, as word spread that there were beings willing to help peaceful species defend themselves against aggressive empires. It seems we have become the Galaxy Emergency Response Service, he told President Jin during their weekly briefing about ongoing interstellar developments. The final message in the official records came from the Galactic Contact database, which updated humanity classification from unknown species to essential galactic security asset. The Deathworlders were no longer humanity's secret. The report concluded they were galactic civilization, newest hope for maintaining peace. Through strength and protecting those who could not protect themselves, the humans had learned that their harsh homeworld had given them advantages they never knew they possessed, and had turned first contact into the beginning of their role as galactic protectors. Earth children would grow up knowing that their planet was part of a larger community of intelligent species, and that sometimes the most peaceful civilizations needed help from those who had learned to survive in the most dangerous environments. The story that began with an alien distress call had become the foundation for humanity's future among the stars, as the species that answered when peaceful people called for help.